Ladies and gentlemen, it's time! Enjoy the show!
Well, I was a fanatic. There's no doubt a fanatic. My goal was to get carried out of the wrestling room because of exhaustion, and it never happened. The thing it did for me every day about 6 o'clock is that when I got out, I looked back in and there was nobody else there. Bottom line was I didn't reach my goal. So guess what happened? I went back in the room again. But I got some quality time because of just some kind of a fanatic goal.
Welcome back to Wrestling Changed My Life podcast. This is your host, Ryan Warner. Thanks for listening, people. We did it. We're back for another episode. And today's guest is Kevin Williams, who is not a big name in the wrestling circles, but is a legitimate badass. And here are a couple reasons why. The guy went to Westpoint, the military academy, on a football scholarship after wrestling in high school, and then went to serve our country in combat as a unit leader in Iraq. And if that wasn't enough, the guy goes and gets his MBA from Michigan, which is one of the top management schools in the country. So this guy has his shit together, and I think what you'll learn in this podcast is he just has a ton of discipline, right? The guy gets up at 4:15 every morning, and he seeks out the hard things each and every day, which I think is something we can all learn from. So appreciate you listening. Enjoy this one, and we'll see you again soon.
All right, Kevin Williams. How you doing, my friend?
I'm well. How are you?
Awesome, man. Pumped to have you
Good.
on today. I know we go way back. We know each other for probably 5 or 6 years now, so have been wanting to have this conversation for a while, man. So I'm excited. I know we've talked about a number of ways we could take this, but I think just to start, just to let the listeners know who they're dealing with here, hit them with your morning routine, man. Let's see what it looks like for you.
Yeah. So my at least during the weekdays, right? My wake up is 4:15. Get dressed, and I'm out of the door by 4:30 at the latest, right? So out of the door at 4:30, head to the gym, get a workout in, shower, change at the gym, and I'm usually at my desk at the absolute latest, 7:15. Usually try to get there by about 7 to start my work day. Typical work day. Go through the day, pick up the kids at the end of the day, come home, play with them, put them to bed. Sometimes, I'll hop on the Peloton after work. Sometimes I'll just relax. Sometimes I'll do more work. Usually in bed by about 10:30, and rinse and repeat.
Now, what if you wake up and you're not feeling it that day? You're feeling tired. I mean, do you sleep in or you just keep going, man? And if you did, what do you tell yourself when you don't want to? Because we all know how that feels waking up super early when you got a light night of sleep.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's days where I absolutely don't want to do it. But I force myself to do it. Right. Part of the reason I wake up at 4:15 for a few different reasons, right? The two main ones are that, I want to work out, and I know that if I wake up at 4:15, I'm not going to have to answer any work emails. I'm not going to have to answer any phone calls. The kids aren't going to be awake, right? So I know that if I wake up at 4:15, that can be my time, right? So that's one reason why I do it. The other reason why I wake up at 4:15 is because waking up at 4:15 isn't always easy, right? So the challenge behind it intrigues me. The challenge behind waking up at 4:15 on days where I absolutely do not want to get out of bed, that's half the reason why I do it, is to kind of force myself to do challenging stuff.
That's what I'm talking about, man. That's what most people don't have. And even people who think they're disciplined, even like me, there'll be at least one day every other week where I admit I hit the snooze button, man. I normally wake up at 5, I wake up at 6, and my whole day's off because of it. It's crazy how these little decisions cascade and multiply over the course of days and even years if you don't get your stuff in check,
Absolutely. And, I'm not going to sit and tell you that I haven't missed a day, right? But I've missed a day or two here and there. And when I do, like you said, it absolutely throws my whole day off, right? So and the whole day I'm just, man, I wish I would have gotten up, man, and I'm kind of beat myself up. And so,
right.
I suffered the quote unquote consequences, if you dare to call them that, of not doing it, right? So I just every morning, 4:15, wake up, no matter how I feel, and get my day going.
You just get it done. It's just easier if you have that standard. You just hold yourself to that standard. Now, what about your workouts? I mean, you're super in shape guy. You got kids, you got a family, but what do your workouts consist of? And I remember the one time you told me, you're like, dude, no matter what it is, like I do the opposite of what I don't want to do, which is like most people go in the gym, they're like, man, it's supposed to be a cardio day, but maybe I'll just lift. And so they lift instead, but you literally do what you don't want to do.
Absolutely. The majority of the time that is true. Right now, I've got to be careful not to end up doing the same thing over and over again. But today was a perfect example, right? So didn't get quite as much sleep last night as I would have liked. Today was one of those mornings where I was dragging. I didn't want to get out of bed, but I forced myself. And so, it was like as I'm getting to the gym, it was one of those low energy mornings, right? So what do I least want to do on a low energy morning? Cardio. So what do I force myself to do this morning? I forced myself into a cardio workout. Just to push myself into, to show myself that I'm capable of doing it. It's all about the challenge and all about pushing yourself.
That's the thing, and it's like in this day and age, we're so cushioned with things that 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, it would have been nothing to work out for an hour a day. Like that would have been the easiest day of your life, and now it's an accomplishment if we get an hour in, and it is. I mean, it's a big deal. If you get an hour in 5-6 days a week, you're in like the 1%. But it's just amazing how what your mind's telling you is really not even close to your physical limit. Like you probably could have been on the treadmill for 5 hours a day and been fine if you had to. So it's like those limits are so self-imposed. Drives me nuts how many people are walking around out there with these self-imposed beliefs that are just restricting things so much. It's hard to
I absolutely agree with you. Absolutely agree. I mean, granted, you got to be careful, right? Because there are some actual limitations out there, right? But one thing I've learned about myself is that a lot of the limitations are actually perceived limitations, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're mental barriers that I've created in my own head for whatever reason, and so for me, it's all about training myself, preparing myself to overcome those barriers, right? And for me, doing that in the gym and pushing myself in the gym, past what I think I'm capable of doing, like, right, that, for me, that translates into what I think I'm capable of doing and accomplishing at work or at home, right? Because you get in these stressful situations or these situations where you don't think that you can achieve something for whatever reason. And I'm always trying to train my mind and body to deal with those situations. And so for me, it translates into other facets of life.
Yeah, and I actually didn't think about that, but I mean, you're a man of control. I mean, a lot of people can go to the gym and get a good workout and stay at it, but and I know a lot of guys who do that, but in the rest of their life, they're falling short, right? They're average at their job, they're yelling at their girlfriend, they're drinking too much, but you're able to carry that control, as I call it, in all areas of your life. But I'm just curious, like, what are some things you struggled with in the past that you feel like you've overcome, or maybe you're still working on them, even if it was like back in high school or whatever? Like, what does that look like for you?
Well, I don't have it down packed, right? But
yeah.
Gosh, I would
like
say,
for me,
one
was,
of the.
I was gonna say for me,
Go ahead.
one.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, yeah. So one always used to be for me was that I used to tell myself that I wasn't good with numbers or whatever, right? I don't know why. I just always thought that. And then as you get into my job with sales, you're working with numbers quite a bit. You're working on proposals, ROI, stuff like that. And so finally one day, like a year and a half ago, I was just like, why the hell do you keep telling yourself you're not good at numbers? Just freaking fix it and get over it. So it was small and it was kind of inconsequential, but just something that I've been telling myself for a long time now. I don't know why. It's like bizarro, but wondering if anything pops to mind with you in that area that you've been working on.
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of things that I'm working on, right? So, I mean, it's similar to kind of what you just said, right? Looking back in life, I never really enjoyed writing. Like, I always enjoyed numbers, right? I was always very analytical. I never enjoyed writing. And as I've kind of gone down this path of continually challenging myself, it's helped flip my mind frame in terms of why is it you don't enjoy writing? And what can you do about it versus just sitting back and saying, oh, I don't enjoy writing, and the buck stops there. All right. So that, I'm always, obviously, as you know, we have twin boys. And so, I'm always working on, my patience, my communication, how I interact with them. What can I do to better interact with them? What can I do to better be a better husband, a better father? So those are the things that jump out at me.
Yeah.
I'm sure if you ask my wife, she could be.
Shout out to Stacy, powerful Stacy Steiner and William. We've talked a lot about kind of the things you're doing now, but I'd love to just understand, how do you think you got to this point?
So growing up, I grew up in in Los Angeles, California, more specifically in Inglewood. And it was one of those. I was always very competitive as a kid, as a young kid, right? So played multiple sports as a kid. I can very much relate to the saying of I hate losing more than I like winning. Losing always stings more than the euphoria of winning for me. And so I was always very, very competitive as a kid, right? And it wasn't just like on an athletic field. It was in academics. Like I wanted to beat everybody, on a test or get the best grade out of anyone, right? And so it's just something that's stuck with me throughout my life, right? One of the, I went to Westpoint, right? One of the main reasons I went to Westpoint was, I looked at the possible opportunities that I had for colleges, and I said, which one do you think is going to be the most challenging, right? And it was Westpoint, right? And so that's one of the main reasons why I chose to go to Westpoint. And so I don't know, it's just something, the idea of challenging myself and challenging yourself and overcoming those challenges, overcoming those mental barriers and learning from them. That process is fascinating to me.
And what do you think it is between two people where they see something that they've never done before, and maybe at first it instills some fear in both people, but then in you see it as you get excited about it because it's an opportunity to grow, whereas someone else maybe would see that and they kind of shriek away because they don't want to get out of their comfort zone. I think the big thing I've taken away is that you have to get out of your comfort zone. You have to push yourself daily, sometimes down to the hour, in order to grow. Like, is that something that resonates with you, that kind of growth through challenges?
Absolutely. I agree with what you said 100%. 100%. I absolutely agree with you. I think that, as we face challenges and obstacles within our daily lives, sometimes they can seem insurmountable, right? One thing that I've found that helps me is, whenever it is I face a challenge, I try to understand, okay, why is it that this thing is, that whatever it is I'm facing, why is this a challenge, right? There's some type of constraint out there usually that's causing it to be a challenge, whether the constraint is time, right? Maybe at work with a certain task or whatever you're trying to do, the constraint is time, right? And so therefore, whatever it is you're trying to get done, you perceive it as being challenging because you have a finite period of time to get whatever, that job is done.
Right.
If it's something physical, right, that maybe the constraint is my perceived physical abilities, right? And so basically I try to whittle it down, right? And so, all right, if it's time or if it's my physical constraint, try to whittle it down to a very minute level and then understand, okay, what can I do to achieve this small or overcome this small barrier, right? And that builds up to another barrier. Okay, what can I do to achieve that small barrier? Because if you try to look at it holistically, you can very easily become overwhelmed, right? If you just look at challenges like, okay, I've got to get X, Y, and Z done, and here are my constraints, and I just don't know how to deal with all this, right? But if you're able to break it down, if you're able to take that problem and break it down to much smaller levels and things that you can actually see yourself doing and overcoming, then you begin to gain some momentum, right? And then you begin to believe in yourself. And you're like, oh, I can do this. Oh, I can do more, right? And so that's, for me, that thought process has really helped me in terms of understanding how to approach challenges, understanding and understanding how to overcome and achieve them.
Where'd you learn that? When did that stick with you think? Because I love that.
I don't know, like when the light bulb went off in my head. But it's probably something I'd say I've learned over time.
Yeah.
Right. That, I'm not going to go out and swim the English Channel right now. Right. But okay, if I need to swim the English Channel, like, what do I need to do?
Right.
Right. Or,
right.
Okay, I need to do this first and then do this and this. And if I complete these dozen different things, you know what? I'll be ready to swim the English Channel.
Right. Yep. Exactly.
So I can't point to a definitive point in time where, the light bulb went off in my head, but it was maybe just one of those, kind of, these things it's just been learned over time.
Well, for someone who puts themselves in the fires day after day, I mean, you were glancing over a big part that in many people's lives, this might be the highlight of their life, but this is just a piece of your journey. You played Division I sports, Division I football at Westpoint. You went to Westpoint, which is, a challenge in itself. And then you went on to serve 4 years in active duty in the thick of things over in the Middle East. I mean, if you had to look back on your life, like what of those three things do you think shaped your life the most? Maybe it's college football, Westpoint, or active service. Like what one had the most impact and maybe why?
I would say it's just the whole Westpoint experience.
Yeah.
Of those three things, of those three, probably had the biggest impact on my life. Westpoint was it was such a different and unique experience compared to anything that I ever been through. And it starts off very intense, right? But then you're in this environment for 4 years, right? So you're in this environment that they call Westpoint for 4 years, and it can't help but rub off on you or have an impact on you, right? If you're in that environment for 4 years, it's going to have an impact on you. So I would say the whole Westpoint experience.
Yeah.
Definitely.
The discipline out there is so insane to me. I mean, you think about it, that's just another way how people live. And to your point, we're so adaptable over time. That's just your normal life. You know, I mean, getting up at God knows whatever time, making your bed to this degree, and then you just having discipline, you know, all throughout your day. I mean, some people might think it's constraining, but there's a guy I listen to, Jocko Willink, who was a Navy SEAL, and he has a podcast, and his kind of motto is discipline equals freedom, because if you're disciplined with your time, disciplined with your thoughts and with your actions, you actually have more time to do other things, because you're not wasting time and you're not, you know, mudding your mind with regret or self-doubt. Like, you're just doing things when they need to be done, and then through that you get more freedom in your life. It just sounds kind of similar to what you're talking about there.
So that is absolutely correct. And here's a perfect example of that, right? So at Westpoint, the thing about Westpoint is that, and you know, that I learned, and that actually, you know, really helped me at Westpoint, is so they tell you where you need to be. So they tell you to be at point X. They tell you when you need to be there. They tell you what you need to be wearing. And they tell you when you show up to point X at this time in this uniform, you need to know these half a dozen things. And if you take the time to prepare, to make sure your uniform looks correct, to make sure that you're there on time, to make sure you know the things that you're supposed to know, you get the freedom, right? Because at that point, the upperclassmen, they see you and they say, okay, you know, Kevin's got his stuff together. You know, Cadet X over here, John Doe over here doesn't. We're all going to spend our time screwing with John Doe. And, you know, what ends up happening is they monopolize your time and they waste all your time, right? So John Doe over there doesn't have the freedom because he or she didn't take the time to prepare himself adequately to show up at point X at the right time, in the right uniform, that looks good, and to know the right stuff that he was supposed to know. Right? But if you take the time to prepare, you put the time in, they'll leave you alone for the most part. Right. And I learned that very early at West Point. I was like, okay, I understand what's going on here. If I just show up at the right time, the right place, the right uniform, I know what I'm supposed to know. They'll leave me alone 80% of the time. And that equates to, I don't know, another hour every day that I get to myself. You know, I'm willing to put in those 15 minutes to get that hour.
Right. And it's the physical time, and then something I've learned, or it's really set in lately, is like just the mental time. Like for example, going back to that situation where, let's say you slept in and missed a workout. Yeah, I only missed 60 minutes of the day by sleeping from 5 to 6, but the mental cloudiness and just constantly thinking back and regretting that hour worth of sleep that might last 12 hours, right? And that is, to me, the real drawback of that lack of discipline. So to your point, I mean, you get an hour back in the day, but you're feeling pretty good the rest of the day mentally because you know you got it done when it needed to happen. So it's like the physical time, but also just the mental peace of mind, which I think seems to be more important as you get a little bit older in life. And you know, we're not that old, but that's really ringing true in the past couple of years to me, at least.
No, you're right. And one thing, and I try to repeat this with the family, right? But you know, the importance of not being short-minded, right? Thinking long-term, right? And so I think that, you know, that it kind of parallels what you were just saying, right? So not thinking about what's going to bring me the most satisfaction, the most gratitude right now in this, you know, this moment that I'm in right now, but what's best for me more long-term. Maybe harder, but it's going to be better for me. Right. And choosing that path.
Yep. I want to hit on just a few quick things before we let you go here, Kevin. So the first is, I always ask every guest about this because I'm always fascinated by the talk we have with ourselves. You know, some people call it self-talk, whatever you want to call it. But, you know, some high performers, I had an Olympic wrestler on here about 2 months ago, and he had a very regimented thing that he would say to himself before every match just to get himself in the right mental place. I had another guy on where, he had something he'd say to himself in a really tough situation where you think of like the most pressure cooker situation you've had in your life where self-doubt could creep in. He had a mantra to kind of keep that out. So I'm wondering, like, if you think back to the most stressful time of your life, and you don't have to tell us what it is, but like, did you have like self-talk that conversation you had with yourself that gets you over that hump to just say, hey, you're not going to give up. You're going to keep going. You're going to keep pushing. I mean, or do you try to keep a clear and empty mind? Like, kind of, how do you think about that? And what's that conversation like for you when those moments really, really count?
Yeah, and so for me, it's I'm always like I mentioned earlier. I'm always trying to prepare myself for that next stressful moment, right? And that's part of the reason why I try to stress myself so much when I go to the gym, right? Why I do what I don't want to, why I wake up at 4:15, why I choose to do what I don't feel like doing that day, right? Is because it creates some stress within my body that I've got to deal with and I've got to manage, right? And so, but what that does is it prepares me to deal with stress in real life situations when stuff is really stressful. And so for me, it's not, there isn't a particular saying that I say to myself when I'm in stressful situations, more so than it's, than I just take a moment to reflect on some of the stressful situations that I've had. And when I say I take a moment, it could be 2-3 seconds, depending on what the stressful situation is. But I just reflect on some of the stressful situations that I've been in, and the fact that I've overcome them, right? And it's you haven't failed yet. You're not going to fail now, right? Like, Kevin, you haven't allowed yourself to fail yet, and now is not the time or place, right? So let's figure out how to get this done.
Exactly. Love
right.
that.
But always for me, always trying to stress my mind and my body, basically every day, starting out with the gym, helps me prepare and helps me deal with and manage those types of situations.
Yeah, it's so similar to what this guy kind of calls callousing the mind. Like, every day you go to the gym, you're callousing your hands, maybe your feet, but really you're callousing the mind, because every time you get through one of those little bits of just, hey, I don't want to do this. And even when you're already in the workout, I mean, it happens every time. It's like, you can count on one thing. You can count on some part of your mind trying to talk you out of doing the last set of the workout. But if you push through that, you develop a little bit more callous on the mind, and you keep going, you just get stronger up there. And that's really what it's about.
That's a perfect analogy. That's a perfect callousing the mind. I like that.
Yeah, I can't take credit for it, but it's something that stuck with me because it's just such an easy saying, though, because we can all relate to that.
Right.
And I know the theme of this podcast is how wrestling impacted someone's life, and it's interesting. We don't have only Olympic level wrestlers on here. We have business leaders. We have ultimate fighters on here. Really the gamut. But I know you had some experience with wrestling, even if it was a little bit. But if you can think back to that, I mean, what if anything did the sport give you, just based on kind of all the incredible experiences you had in your life?
If I look back at my time that I spent wrestling, like you said, it wasn't a long time, but if I look back at my time that I spent wrestling, if they gave me one thing more than anything else, it's mental toughness. Mental toughness, right? So, wrestling, soccer, football, track and field, right? Those are the 4 sports I played in high school. Wrestling was by far the most challenging sport I've ever participated in, right? And so, the mental toughness it took to prepare myself for a match, the mental toughness and discipline it took to cut and maintain weight, and then the mental toughness it took to get through a match, right? I mean, it's mano a mano out there, right? It's like there's
Right.
no one else you can rely on or lean on, and so the mental toughness and mental fortitude it took, to get through some of those really trying, exhausting situations, was probably the biggest thing that I took away from wrestling.
Yeah, I mean, you couldn't have said it better there with the mental toughness, and it's cool to hear someone like you say that, because you've been through so many experiences that maybe would have shaped that as well. But it's cool to hear you say that, even the, maybe I don't know how long you wrestled, but maybe a couple of years you wrestled, that sticks out to you, and that's why, I think it's just so important that you don't have to do wrestling as a kid, but I think you're better off for it, and I think that's kind of the central thesis of this, is that, hey, let's get some of these stories out there, that it's not just a meathead maybe going in there with with his buddies. It's a lot more to that, and it's you're developing something I think is a rare commodity now, which is that mental toughness or unmitigating daily discipline you have with yourself. So I just love hearing stories about that, and I think just to know that someone like you, who has all the experience you have, as that kind of perspective on it, is very exciting. Hey man, I just wanted to, thank you for coming on the podcast today. I really appreciated it. I know you got a family, you got the twins running around. I don't know if they're at the house or if they're still at daycare, man, but thanks for your time today, brother. I had a great time.
That's the end of this episode, but definitely not the end of the show. For more episodes, please go to wrestlingchangemylife.org. Subscribe to us on iTunes. Give us a star rating. Show the love, baby. Show the love. Thank you so much. We'll see you again soon. Peace.